Have you ever found yourself in the quiet moments wondering if life still holds surprises, especially when you least expect it? When the world feels a little too still and your heart quietly longs for something more. This story starts on one of those perfectly ordinary afternoons that turned out anything but ordinary. The afternoon sun streamed lazily through the blinds, casting long golden stripes across my living room rug. It was one of those quiet Tuesdays where the loudest sound in the house was the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock standing tall in the hall. Usually that steady ticking comforted me, a familiar heartbeat in the silence. But today it felt different. It felt like it was marking time in a way I couldn't quite grasp, as if I were waiting for something to happen, but unsure what. My children are grown now, spread out across the country, chasing their own dreams. And since Richard passed 3 years ago, this house often felt too big, too empty, echoing with memories that made the quiet heavier. I had just finished a lukewarm cup of tea, debating whether to tackle the stubborn rose bushes outside or simply surrender to a nap when I heard the familiar rumble of Carol Harrison's SUV pulling into the driveway next door. Carol and Tom are the kind of neighbors you can count on, always ready, with a smile, a cup of sugar, or to keep an eye on things when you're away. I knew their youngest son Liam was visiting. He was in his late 20s, a software engineer somewhere on the West Coast. Over the years, I'd seen him during holidays, a polite, quiet young man who always seemed a little lost in his own thoughts, like a small island adrift in a sea of noise. That evening, the neighborhood association was holding its annual summer potluck down at the community park. Normally, I'd bring my famous potato salad, make small talk for an hour, then head home, a routine ritual of suburban life. But something felt different tonight. Maybe it was the lingering silence of the afternoon, or maybe a quiet craving for real human connection, something that didn't come filtered through a screen. So I decided to go. The park was alive with energy, the joyful shrieks of children on the playground, groups of adults gathered around picnic tables overflowing with homemade dishes, and the warm, smoky scent of barbecue mingling with citronella candles flickering in the evening breeze. I found a quiet spot on a bench at the edge of the main gathering, shaded by a grand old oak tree. Just as I settled my plate pasta salad on one side, a juicy burger on the other, a shadow fell over me. Mind if I join you? Everywhere else seems packed, a voice asked. It was Liam Harrison stepping beside me with a shy, hesitant smile. I gestured to the empty space on the bench, not at all plenty of room. He sat down carefully, balancing his plate. He was no longer the lanky teenager I vaguely remembered. He had filled out broad shoulders beneath a simple gray t-shirt. There were faint lines around his eyes when he smiled, eyes the shade of moss after rain, calm, thoughtful. We sat in companionable silence for a few moments, letting the lively sounds of the park wash over us. I noticed his hands, long fingers, clean nails, the kind of hands that looked like they knew their way around a keyboard, but maybe also a guitar. He caught me looking and tucked his hands under his thighs, a slight flush coloring his cheeks. It was unexpectedly endearing. "Your mom's macaroni and cheese is legendary," I said, breaking the silence. Liam laughed, a low, genuine sound that made the corners of his eyes crinkle. "Yeah, she guards that recipe like it's a state secret. I've been trying to get it out of her for years. Some secrets are best kept." I smiled, feeling the warmth between us grow. "That just adds to the mystique." He nodded, savoring a bite of the creamy mac and cheese. So he began, after swallowing. "You're Sarah, right? My folks talk about you." "That's me," I confirmed. "And you're Liam, the prodigal son returns." He chuckled. "Something like that. Just needed a break from the city grind. Thought some home cooking might do the trick." There was a subtle weariness in his voice, and an honesty beneath the polite surface, a weight that softened his smile. It was unexpected, this glimpse behind the curtain of quiet reserve. We talked easily after that, not about anything deep or complicated, but about the neighborhood, the ever-changing little quirks of suburban life, and the ridiculous new HOA rules about lawn ornaments. Liam shared a funny story about his cat back in Seattle, and I told him about my daughter's recent disastrous attempt at baking. Simple conversations, yet beneath them flowed a strange current, something unspoken. It wasn't flirtation, not in the usual sense. It was recognition, a moment of being truly seen and maybe seeing someone else in return, not just as a neighbor or a passing acquaintance, but as a person worth noticing. And maybe, just maybe, we looked at each other a little differently. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the grass and painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the crowd began to thin. Families packed up their coolers and led their tired children home. Liam didn't seem eager to leave, and neither did I. He started talking about his job, the pressure, the feeling of being a small cog in an enormous machine. It wasn't a complaint. It was more like a quiet musing. Sometimes, he said, staring toward the darkening playground, I wonder what it's all for. You build these complex systems, these intricate lines of code, but does it really matter? It was a question I'd often asked myself since Richard died. What was the point of neatly folded laundry of a garden weeded to perfection of a balanced checkbook? I thought for a moment, choosing my words slowly. I think I said finding meaning isn't about the grand gestures or big milestones. It's in the small connections. The code you write connects people, helps them communicate, learn, maybe even just escape for a little while. Liam nodded thoughtfully, and in that moment, surrounded by fading daylight and the soft hum of the neighborhood, I realized that sometimes it's those small, quiet connections that bring light back into the places where darkness once settled. Seamless, lead-in. Sometimes the smallest moments carry the biggest meaning. Just like that quiet conversation under the oak tree, it wasn't changing the world, but it made a little corner of it feel a little less lonely. And sometimes that's exactly what matters most. That matters, Liam said, turning to look at me with those green eyes searching mine in the soft fading light. You think so, I do, I affirmed gently. Just like this conversation, it's not going to change the world, but maybe it makes this little corner feel a bit less lonely, even if only for a moment. A slow smile spread across his face, this time reaching his eyes and lighting them up. Yeah, he breathed out, a quiet relief in his voice. Yeah, I guess it does. We sat there together as dusk settled completely, the first twinkling stars beginning to prick the deepening twilight sky. The air grew cooler, carrying with it the fresh scent of freshly cut grass and damp earth, a reminder that summer was still holding on even as the day faded away. The easy silence returned, but now it felt charged thick with unspoken understanding and the comfort of a shared moment. It was like discovering an unexpected harbor in the middle of an ordinary day beneath that old oak tree. The next few days passed with a gentle shift, a new rhythm that felt subtly changed. I began seeing Liam more often, walking his parents' ancient golden retriever, fiddling with the engine of his dad's old pickup truck, or simply sitting on their porch swing, laptop in hand. We exchanged waves across fences and shared small bits of conversation about the weather or the stubborn crabgrass invading my flower beds. Each brief interaction was like adding a new brushstroke to a painting I hadn't realized I was creating, a quiet, colorful tapestry made from simple moments. There was an ease between us, a refreshing lack of pretense or expectation that made everything feel natural. One particularly sweltering afternoon, I was struggling with a heavy bag of mulch in my front yard, the coarse plastic straps biting painfully into my fingers, when suddenly Liam was there jogging across the lawn. Need a hand with that, Sarah? He asked, already reaching out for the heavy bag. Oh, Liam, thank you. This stuff weighs a ton, I said, wiping sweat from my brow, grateful for the help. He lifted it effortlessly and carried it over to the rose bushes I'd been trying to revive. No problem at all. Looks like you're putting in some serious work here. Trying to, I sighed, brushing a stray strand of hair from my face. These roses are needier than my kids were as toddlers. He laughed softly, setting the mulch down gently. My mom says the same thing about her roses as Allie is, he said with a grin. He lingered, leaning against the oak tree that shaded my yard, looking down at his hands before meeting my gaze again. Actually, he said hesitantly, I was wondering, I'm trying to troubleshoot this weird bug in a personal project I'm working on. And honestly, sometimes talking it through helps. My parents' eyes just glaze over when I mention code. You don't have to, but would you mind just listening for a bit? Sometimes explaining it out loud makes the solution appear. I was surprised, but also touched. I know absolutely nothing about code, Liam, I warned, smiling. But I'm a very good listener. He pulled up one of the plastic Adirondack chairs from my porch and sat opposite me, settling into the dappled shade beneath the tree. Opening his laptop, the soft glow of the screen illuminated his face as he began explaining, using analogies I could understand. He compared lines of code to recipes, functions to kitchen tools, painting a picture that made the technical seem almost familiar. His initial shyness melted away, replaced by focused enthusiasm. Though I didn't understand the technical details, I heard the frustration in his voice, the intellectual challenge of chasing a solution to a glitch. I listened intently, asking the occasional naive question, trying to follow the path he laid out. He never made me feel foolish for not grasping it. Instead, he patiently rephrased, finding new ways to explain, like a teacher devoted to guiding a student. After about 20 minutes, he suddenly stopped, stared at the screen, and typed furiously for a moment before leaning back with a deep sigh of relief. Wait a second. I think yes, that's it. Talking about the user input sequence, you asked why it needed that specific validation, right? That made me realize I'd put it in the wrong module entirely. He looked up at me, a wide grin spreading across his face, disbelief and gratitude mingling in his expression. Sarah, you're a genius, I laughed, shaking my head. Hardly. I just asked a question. No. But you listened? He insisted, his eyes shining. Really listened. Nobody does that anymore, not really. Everyone's just waiting for their turn to talk or staring at their phones. He closed the laptop, looking genuinely grateful. Thank you, seriously. Anytime I said sincerely, though I couldn't promise my input would always be helpful. Just listening is useful, he repeated softly. We sat together for a while longer. The earlier ease between us now deepened by that shared moment of problem solving, however one-sided the actual solution might have been. Liam began asking about my life before Richard, about my career in library archiving, a part of my life I rarely spoke of anymore. He seemed genuinely interested, asking thoughtful questions that invited me to open up. I found myself sharing stories I hadn't thought about in years, memories of preserving fragile historical documents, the quiet hum of the research rooms, the satisfying weight of knowledge carefully cataloged. It felt good, almost like revisiting an old familiar part of myself and seeing it reflected in someone else's attentive gaze. The afternoon shadows stretched longer, the heat softening as evening approached. There was a comfortable intimacy to our conversation, a quiet sharing beneath the sprawling branches of that old oak tree. It was like peeling back layers, not only of each other, but within ourselves. A couple of evenings later, Carol mentioned they were planning a small family barbecue before Liam headed back to Seattle. You should absolutely come, Sarah, she said with a smile. Keep us old folks company, while Liam talks about algorithms, or whatever it is he does. I hesitated only for a moment before accepting. The thought of spending another evening in Liam's quiet, thoughtful company was surprisingly appealing. The barbecue was relaxed, just Carol, Tom, Liam, and me on their back deck. Tom grilled burgers while Carol fussed over the side dishes. Liam seemed more at ease than I'd seen him in a long time, laughing easily at his dad's terrible jokes. As twilight deepened, Tom and Carol went inside to tidy up, leaving Liam and me alone on the deck, quietly nursing our drinks and watching the sky slowly darken. Smooth let in. That evening by the oak tree had opened a door, a quiet, unexpected connection that lingered in the air. And now, as night settled softly around us, a new conversation unfolded beneath the stars. The flickering tiki torches cast dancing shadows across the backyard, their warm light weaving with the soft glow from the house. The air was rich with the mingling sense of grilled food and the sweet, heady fragrance of Carol's night-blooming jasmine drifting through the summer air. It was a perfect summer evening, the kind that feels both timeless and fragile. Breaking the comfortable silence, Liam's voice came quietly, almost hesitant. You know, Liam, I said, turning to him, that conversation we had the other day under your tree. He nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the fireflies just beginning to blink among the grass, tiny sparks flickering like nature's own gentle light show. It meant a lot, he said, voice low and thoughtful. It's been a weird couple of years for me. Work life, everything. It all felt kind of hollow. He paused, swirling the ice in his glass thoughtfully. Coming back here, I didn't expect much beyond nostalgia and decent food. But talking with you, it's different. You don't try to fix things or offer platitudes. You just listen, and you see things. I turned to look at him, really looked, the soft torchlight outlining his profile, his expression serious and vulnerable, in a way that made my heart skip. Maybe it's because I'm at a point in my life where I appreciate genuine connection more than easy answers, I said quietly. Life teaches you that platitudes wear thin pretty fast. He met my gaze, his green eyes seeming to deepen in the flickering torchlight. You make things feel less hollow. The air between us suddenly felt charged thick with unspoken emotion. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was potent, a delicate electric tension born from shared glances, quiet conversations, and unexpected moments of understanding. There was a magnetic pull, like two solitary ships drawn together in the vast ocean of loneliness, or perhaps just a profound, unexpected empathy that needed no words. He leaned forward slightly, resting his hand on the armrest between us. I could feel the warmth radiating from him, a tangible human heat that stirred a forgotten rhythm in my chest. My heart beat a little faster. This was new territory. Liam was my neighbor's son, young enough to be my child, even significantly younger. Yet in this moment, those labels didn't matter. The connection felt real, raw, and untainted, existing purely in the space between us under the jasmine-scented sky. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. He didn't move closer or break the gaze. His eyes held a question, yes, but also a deep respect. It wasn't the predatory look sometimes given by men, regardless of age. It was open, uncertain, almost reverent wrongs. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly seen, not as a widow, a neighbor, or simply an older woman, but as me, Sarah, a person with her own history, quiet strength, and capacity for connection. Slowly, very slowly, he reached out. His fingertips brushed lightly against the back of my hand resting on the chair's arm. It wasn't a caress, not quite, but a point of contact, electric and grounding all at once. A faint, definite spark jumped between us. My breath hitched. I didn't pull away. I couldn't. His touch lingered, just a heartbeat, a silent acknowledgement of the energy flowing between us. Then just as gently, he withdrew his hand. His gaze dropped for a moment, then lifted to meet mine again. A faint smile touched his lips, tinged with a hint of sadness. "My flight's on Saturday," he said softly. The words hung in the air, gentle but firm. Reality intruded. This connection intense, unexpected, as it was existed within the framework of separate lives. He lived across the country, belonged to a different generation, his path stretching ahead, while mine felt more settled, quieter. "I know," I replied, voice just as soft. There was no need for more words. The moment itself, the brief touch, the shared look was the climax, an emotional peak defined by restraint, unspoken goodbyes, and mutual respect. It wasn't about chasing something impossible or inappropriate. It was about recognizing the beauty of a connection found in the most unexpected places, a secret held between two people on a warm summer night. We sat in silence for a few more minutes, the intensity slowly fading, replaced by a warm, bittersweet calm. When Carol and Tom came back outside, the spell was broken, but the memory of that moment stayed with me, imprinted on the night air, like the lingering jasmine scent. Liam left 2 days later. We said goodbye politely at his parents' driveway, a simple handshake, a shared look that carried the weight of all our unspoken moments. "Thank you, Sarah," he said quietly, "for everything. Safe travels." "Liam," I replied with a smile, "don't be a stranger to your folks." As his car disappeared down the street, I didn't feel sad, not exactly. Instead, I felt richer. The quiet house didn't seem quite so empty. The ticking clock didn't sound quite so lonely. That brief, unexpected connection with Liam hadn't changed the fundamental facts of my life, but it had shifted something deep within me. It reminded me that emotional intimacy could bloom in surprising places, that vulnerability was a kind of strength, and that being truly seen, even for just a little while, was a profound gift. It was proof that life, even in its quieter middle chapters, could still hold moments of startling, unexpected beauty and connection. I went back inside, made myself a fresh cup of tea, and settled by the window. Watching the afternoon sun slant through the blinds, I noticed something different. The stripes on the rug looked brighter somehow, as if the world itself had subtly shifted.